Hello, welcome to the Pyramid Podcast, where three lads discuss all things on the English football pyramid. On today's episode, we'll have a review of Gareth Southgate's England squad, a Premier League preview with the big transfer stories ahead of deadline day, look ahead to the weekend fixtures for Leeds and Yeovil, and round two of Spin the Wheel. I'm your host, Alex Murphy, and once again, I'm joined by Tom Lawrence and Tom Gallagher. Boys, we'll get straight back into it. The England squad, I'm going to run through the squad with you. I'm really interested to get your views on Gareth Southgate's squad and whether you think there's any big omissions or any changes that you would make. So in goal, he's got Ramsdale, Sam Johnston and Jordan Pickford. Defence, he's got Ben Chilwell, Levi Colwill, Dunk, Mark Guehi, Harry Maguire, Tomori, Kieran Trippier, Kyle Walker. In midfield, Trent's been added. So we've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Jude Bellingham, Conor Gallagher, Jordan Henderson, KP and Declan Rice. And then your forwards, you got Eze, Phil Foden, Grealish, HK, James Maddison, Eddie Nketiah, Marcus Rashford, Saka and Wilson. Laura, come to you first.
I'm pretty happy with that squad, to be honest with you. The two glaring ones for me are I'm not quite sure why Nick Pope's not fancied as one of the goalkeepers. Surely he should be in there over Sam Johnston. Maybe he's had a chat with him and Nick Pope said he doesn't want to be number 3 if he's behind Pickford and Ramsdale, but I can't imagine that's the case. So I don't know what's gone on there. And in midfield, I would definitely have James Ward-Prowse over Jordan Henderson for a number of reasons. Obviously, his form's been good since he's joined West Ham. He was actually good for Southampton last year, even though they got relegated. And we know that Jordan Henderson's gone to Saudi now. So in a year's time, when we get to the Euros, he's certainly not going to have had a season at a good enough level to prepare for what that tournament brings. So I definitely would have had James Ward-Prowse in there. You can say something similar about Calvin Phillips. He hasn't had an awful lot of football, but just speaking to you boys before we came on, there's not really anyone you can bring in for him. I don't think at the moment. I was trying to think who could you bring in to replace Calvin Phillips in that midfield at the moment. And the only one I could think of is really like Harrison Reed, who's a good little player, but I don't think you take Phillips out of the England setup for him. So I'm pretty happy with it. I know there's a bit of a thing with Southgate, isn't there, that he's got his favourites and he doesn't pick off form. But I don't think he should be picking his team based off the first 3 games of the Premier League season. I'm quite happy for him to pick based off performances for England over the last year and their league form over a year, which I think he's done pretty much with this squad. So I'm fairly happy with it, but I know T-Girl's probably got a bit more to say on it than I have.
So let me just come in quickly. I would say I do agree with you, Laura, about Calvin Phillips. The only thing I will say about him and Maguire's inclusion is, we get the fact that they are both good players for England, but it doesn't look like they'll be starting many games going forward. So if you're Southgate, okay, you include these players in your squad. I think it's basically an example of our lack of depth in those positions. But what I will say is those players won't play at all this season. Maguire is our 4th, 5th choice centre half, especially if United are going to sign Johnny Evans. KP looks like he's going to be struggling for game time this season when they've signed Nunez and they've signed Kovacic, and Rodri is just an absolute monster. He doesn't miss any minutes. So if you're looking at that for the Euros next season, potentially you need to bring in other players. But like you say, and I completely agree with you, it's just the strength and depth in those 2 particular positions isn't quite there yet. And a good example of that is actually the way they've laid out the England squad announcement on Twitter, and they put Trent in midfield, even though he's obviously a right back, but for England he's a midfielder. The only other thing I would say potentially is Watkins. I liked Watkins at the end of last season. He was on fire at Villa. He's obviously got a hat-trick this season and a couple of assists. So he sort of continued that form on under Emery. So I would probably have picked Watkins over Wilson, who hasn't started yet for Newcastle. But I mean, there's not much in it between the players to be overly angry about it.
No, I think Watkins is maybe slightly unlucky not to get in because he was quite good towards the back end of last year. But I think it also would have been harsh on Wilson to bring him out just because of a couple of games that he hasn't started. And he has scored this season as well. And obviously he's been in and around the England setup since the World Cup, really. So I think it will take a little bit more than a couple of games on the bench for Wilson to come out. But thinking about it, you probably could have had Ollie Watkins over Nketiah. That's an interesting inclusion because he hasn't done an awful lot, I don't think, for Arsenal. Sometimes you say that and then you look back at the stats and he's got like 10 in his last 11 games or something, and I'm completely wrong. But what do you think on it, Murph? Would you have had anything different to that squad?
I think just on the Maguire and KP positions, obviously everyone's going to be the same, that people are getting picked for England off of not playing for their clubs. But Southgate seems to have a big kind of steer for England on personality and environment. And I just wonder, you had the likes of like Connor Cody used to get in England squads, probably not likely to play in major tournaments. Are they just big characters and names that have been in that Gareth Southgate dressing room now for the past sort of 5-6 years? And maybe they're not going to start, maybe Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice and one of the other midfielders will play in there, and KP isn't going to play. And maybe, Levi Colwell might partner one of the other centre backs in there. But you got to remember, it doesn't look like John Stones is in there with injury. Maybe Maguire would have been left out off the back of it. But I just wonder if they're two kind of personalities that they're going to keep in the squad and go to the Euros, even if they're the sort of like 21st, 22nd, 23rd men in that squad that go, and that's why they're being kept about there. The only one I wondered if they had a slight chance of going, I did actually ask you, Laura, if he's been in an England squad before, was Jared Bowen. I thought that he's looked good for West Ham. Thought he would have been good to be in there. I actually thought it would be between him and maybe Solly March to go and be a competition for the right side with Saka, but looks like he's gone for an extra striker in there with Nketiah. They've put Maddison in as a forward. I'd maybe have had him in that midfielder list if he's going to maybe play in the 10 with Bellingham and Rice behind him. So be really interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, Tomo?
Yeah, so the only thing I would add is like, I do find these debates really interesting, and it like whenever I post the England squad news on Twitter, you always get people commenting and replying, basically slagging off Southgate. But at the end of the day, the only sort of the players that we're mainly arguing about are sort of the fringe players in this squad, the sort of the, like you're saying, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th picks. I remember, was it the World Cup? We all kicked off that James Maddison didn't get a minute, and it was just basically you're arguing about these players when there's like the reality is there's not much difference between Wilson and Watkins, or there's not much difference between Bowen and March, and I mean who else would be in that position who's sort of like hogging bent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like these guys, we can argue until we're blue in the face, but the reality is when push comes to shove at the Euros next year, we'll sort of have like 13, 14 players who will play the whole time. I suppose the only sort of caveat to that is the omission of Raheem Sterling, who he's not included this time round, but he's one who I think if he has a great season at Chelsea, he'll be a starter next year at the Euros.
Yeah, I would imagine if Sterling goes on and has a good season, he'll be in over the likes of Eze because he'll probably stand out more at Chelsea. But I get what you're saying about we normally argue in the toss over like the 23rd, 24th, 25th picks. The one caveat to that is Harry Maguire because he normally plays. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, I think he'll play in these upcoming internationals just because John Stones is injured. But when John Stones is back, I think it'll be very interesting to see whether he goes with Stones and Maguire or he brings in, probably looking at Levi Colwell now if he's going to start at Chelsea every week. So that will be the interesting one because, like you say, Calvin Phillips, it doesn't matter too much. They're not going to be playing. Harry Maguire normally does. So that's the one that's going to be the one to keep an eye on. But like I say, this is just, I think we've got another international break in October, maybe one in November. So we'll see how it unfolds. But yeah, certainly one to keep an eye on in the central defence position.
Yeah, and just one final reflection. It's interesting, isn't it? Everyone looks at the Premier League as like the strongest league in the world now, but you could argue our two best players are now out in other leagues, with Bellingham tearing it up in Madrid and Kane making a good start in Munich. So yeah, I can't say I'm buzzing about international break. I don't think many people tend to be, but always nice to watch England games when they are on. So yeah, we've got two fixtures for them. Boys, let's look ahead to the Premier League fixtures for the weekend then. Selfishly, I want to start on Arsenal, Man United. A few of the England squad we just spoke about there will be taking part in that game. Tom, I'll come to you first from a United point of view, because I've got absolutely no idea how that game's going to go. I'm not particularly confident, but Arsenal aren't in the greatest form either.
I've got an idea. United will lose. Like, of all the positives that have come out of Erik ten Hag's time at the club, which has obviously only been a year, 14 months, whatever it is now. One thing is for sure is we lose these big games away from home, or we certainly don't win them. What you will say about the two teams is that they've started quite similarly in the fact that they've not both sort of hit the ground running, but they've managed to get points on the board, but quite scruffily, if I can use that word. I basically give the edge to Arsenal just basically because they're at home. United, it's a away record there. And in terms of sort of the lineups, I would expect, like, Tomiyasu's back from suspension, so I'd expect him to come in at right back, and then you'd have White and Saliba at centre half. So I think Arsenal will sort of go back to sort of back to basics, and I just think they're massive favourites.
Laura?
Yeah. We said last week it was a must-win for Man United. I wouldn't go quite as far as that for Arsenal this week, but it's a big, big game, particularly at home, because they've dropped those points against Fulham. If they had beaten Fulham, you could almost facilitate a draw. And I think the most interesting thing about the game is what Arteta does for that team. I said on, I think, last week's pod that I think he needs to revert back to what worked well last season and go back to Ben White at right back, bring Gabriel back into that central defence. And it will be really interesting to see what he does in midfield, and probably a good indication of how much he respects United as to whether that midfield is Rice, Partey and Odegaard, or whether it's Rice, Havertz and Odegaard as it has been at the start of this season. I expect Arsenal to win the game as well. I think they're just a better team at the moment, and they are at home, and they'll be bang up for that game. But obviously it's a difficult one. And I just think Arteta just needs to simplify it a little bit, go back to what works best. And I think if he does that, then he'll come away with the 3 points on Sunday. But that's the biggest thing for me, that midfield three and the defensive partnership in the middle.
I actually agree with you, and I think the same goes for the United midfield, because actually away from home, I've got a feeling that Martial comes out of the starting 11 and he brings in a McTominay, and then he plays like Bruno either as a false 9, or he'll play Bruno on the left and Rashford up top. So it's sort of like he did in some of the big games last year, where he basically plays Bruno on the wing to shore things up a little bit. So I wonder if he does that. That'd be interesting to see. Like United, our record at the Emirates lately hasn't been great. They are unbeaten in the last 5 home games against us, and they've won 4 of them, drawn the other. A little betting tip for you, if you like the over and under goals. Basically, in each of Arsenal's last 10 Premier League home games, each game has seen over 2.5 goals scored. So that might be sort of a nice little bet if you want to put on a little bet builder or something like that. But yeah, as always, Bruno will be the important sort of creative threat. He's created the most big chances in the Premier League this season with 4. So you'd expect that sort of reliance on him to create to continue. Yeah, go on, Laura.
Do you know what? Just listening to you there, I hate to say it, I really fancy Arsenal.
Yeah.
Like, you're just talking through that United team there and talking about maybe a Bruno at false 9 or shoving him out on the wing to shore things up in midfield. I hate it. I think you'll get overrun and get outclassed at the Emirates on Sunday, and I really do fancy Arsenal. I don't want Arteta to overthink it too much, but if they play anywhere near like what they've been playing over the last year on average, they should really win that game.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree. I think Arsenal will win. I think they might go on and win quite comfortably, the way that you guys have just spoken about it. I always, with my Man United sort of hat on, try and give them a chance. But hearing you both speak there, I think Arsenal will go on and win it. I think our team's so unsettled at the moment. I couldn't tell you what our 11's going to be. I'm looking at people doing Man United's predicted 11 versus Arsenal, and they've got Cucurella starting left back, who currently plays for Chelsea and played for them last night. So that's kind of a bit of a situation that we're in at the minute, where we've got Varane out, we've got Shaw out. Casemiro will obviously play. We don't know whether he'll play Eriksen. Has he got the legs for it? So as Tomo says, does McTominay come in then? But then does he trust Anthony, Martial, and Rashford as the forward three there? Or does he do something, as you said, where I think Mount might be used there in big games moving forward, but Bruno went out wide right some games last year. It just stinks like Ten Hag doesn't quite know what he's trying to do there. He's got no big result against top 9 side, I think, in 10 games, which we spoke about last time. And there's nothing that either of you have said there that make me think that could change. Tomo?
Do you know what the most depressing thing about this fixture is for a United fan? Because we all basically predict an Arsenal win, is the fact that the next 2 weeks is international break. And I absolutely hate going into international break off a defeat, because you just sat there stewing as a United fan, just like that. Well, what you want when you lose a game, especially a big game, is like a midweek game, to sort of win again. So yeah, I agree. Negative, I know, but I honestly can see sort of 3-1. 3-1 is my official prediction. So yeah, looking for a long 2 weeks international break. Yeah, in the
Let me try and shed some positivity on that for you. At least the international break, you get a bit of time to maybe bring Mason Mount back to fitness, maybe bring a couple of additions into the club over the next 2 days, and they can settle in over the course of the break. And also, when's the striker back? Højlund.
He's meant to have been training this week, Laura, and he's meant to be available, but apparently Man United are doing a bit of a weird thing where they're releasing training photos, but Højlund's not in the photos, even though the Denmark manager came out and said that he's been speaking with Ten Hag and he's playing against Arsenal this weekend. They've not given him a squad number yet either. It all feels like United are almost wanting to be like, oh, we're not sure if Hodgson's available. Then all of a sudden, teams come out at 3:30 on Sunday and he's starting up front in the number 9 shirt.
Well, I don't mind that. Sometimes you need a script written, and if that could be a masterclass. If the teams come out at 3:30 on Sunday and Højlund's in there, even if he's on the bench, suddenly the whole narrative spins and the energy spins, and it's all, we weren't expecting that. And suddenly, if he starts, or even if he comes off the bench, do you remember when it might have been against? I can't remember if it was Arsenal or Liverpool, but
Rashford.
Martial's debut.
Yeah, Martial was Liverpool, but Rashford did it against Arsenal as well.
Well, there you go. There you go. Do you know what I mean? And suddenly it could be the Højlund show. So that could be a masterclass. If Højlund's in the squad, starting or on the bench, I would be having probably a different think about how that game could go. If he's any good, which I've got no idea because I've only seen YouTube clips. But I'm assuming because of the price tag, he should be half decent.
Yeah, and the worry about the Højlund clips as well is it's the same Denmark hat-trick against Finland with him sliding in at the near post every time, which when you've paid 70 million and got less league goals than Beto, is deeply worrying. But Tomo, before we move on from that game, just want to touch on the kind of transfer news. I touched on Cucurella's being predicted to start left back despite being a Chelsea player. There's been an ongoing saga with Amrabat for United. Just first on United, then Arsenal. Any kind of other major incomings you're expecting?
Yeah, the worrying thing about these United pursuits of Amrabat and Cucurella is that it clearly shows we're skint. Because and obviously we're right on the edge of FFP, which is a new thing for United fans to have to deal with, because we've always been used to basically being able to afford whoever we want. But now we're sort of going to Fiorentina and saying, yeah, we can't afford to pay 25 million for Amrabat, but we can get him on loan. And a similar thing with this Cucurella stuff, where we're trying to shave a couple million off his loan fee because he played in the League Cup last night and now he's ineligible to play for us in that competition. But I expect Cucurella or Reguilon to get done, because clearly needs must. We need a left back. I'm not expecting too much from either of those signings. And then Amrabat's an exciting one, but purely based on the fact that I thought he was class at the World Cup. But if I'm going to sit here and say I've watched a lot of Fiorentina games last season, I would be telling a big fat lie. So he was obviously good at the World Cup, and he a little bit like Højbjerg, like we spoke about in the last pod, he'd be someone to sort of supplement Casemiro And he would actually be someone who you would look at starting away at the Emirates alongside Casemiro. Not that I think Erik ten Hag sort of plays those pragmatic games too much, but yeah. So Cucurella and Amrabat loans, but that's sort of depressing. It's a depressing thought.
My concern with Amrabat is everyone's saying that we desperately need him and he had a good World Cup and there's the clip of him sprinting back and tackling Mbappe. But why, if he is someone to come in and start for United, and I take Laura's point on the last pod that maybe it isn't a starter, it's adding depth to the midfield and that sort of thing. But why are they willing to even entertain £2 million loans, an obligation to buy for 20 mil?
I'll tell you why.
Go on.
Because he's got 1 year left on his contract and he's not signing a new one.
All right, well, that clears that up. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Right. And any business for Arsenal? Any line?
No, just outgoings, I think.
Who?
They've got Rob Hold. Yeah, just basically the runt of the litters, like the Rob Holdings of this world.
Rob,
sorry,
Rob.
sorry. Sorry, Bob.
Yeah. Don't get caught in that minefield, Teagle. You'll be sending apologies out later to Rob and his family.
Guys, we'll get a hairline than me now as well, so I'm on the struggle bus with that one.
Very true. Guys, we'll move on to Liverpool Villa, another game on Sunday, and one I am absolutely stunned has not been picked for TV, and they've gone for Crystal Palace Wolves. It is absolutely shocking decision from whoever's made it. Maybe the fixtures weren't released on that day for when it happened, and other fixtures have dictated that, but can't believe that's not on TV. Loro, that's a really tasty tie, in my opinion. Can I get your thoughts on the game, please?
Well, it's a mouth-watering fixture, isn't it? I think that's the best fixture of the weekend for me. And the best game, and the one that offers the biggest chance of having an awful lot of goals in it and a lot of attractive football. So I echo what you say there. How on earth that's been left? We knew Villa were going to be a good side this year. They were good at the end of last year. How can you pick? I guess Villa are there because they're in the Europa League tonight or whatever it is, and they've got to play on Sunday. But why aren't all Prem games that aren't 3 o'clock on Saturday shown? They've got to be. They're too big not to be, especially a game like Liverpool Villa. They're doing themselves a disservice and shooting themselves in the foot by not showing games like that, or even give it to another channel, whatever you need to do. But the game, I haven't got much insight into the game in terms of how I think it's going to go, because I just think I think we could be missing out on a 4-4 there. I think it could be an absolute humdinger of a game. I think Liverpool are susceptible at the back, and I think they're good going forward. And I think Villa have shown getting beat 5 at Newcastle, but then looking good in the other games that they can do damage, particularly that Diaby away from home. I think he scored in both fixtures. So I'm gutted I'm not going to be watching it, and I think it will be a high-scoring game. And if you want a prediction from me, I'm going to say 4-4.
Can I just jump in there? I didn't realise that game was not on TV, and I just think that's an absolute fucking disgrace.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm spending the best part of 150 quid a month on all of these channels, and they can't get Liverpool and Villa on TV. A game that I would absolutely love to watch. Like Darwin Núñez, banging form, probably will start.
I know why it's not on TV. I know why it's not. It would have been a Saturday game, wouldn't it? And Villa will be playing tonight against Hibs on Thursday, which would have changed it to Sunday. So
yeah. No, that's all well and good. But what you're saying then is, if they weren't in the Europa League, then it would have then they would have picked that for Saturday 3 p.m. So it wouldn't have been on TV anyway. So whoever's at Sky and BT, whoever the fuck, like, they needed to choose that game. And like Palace and Wolves, like, it's
that's an even bigger issue. Palace and Wolves. Forget Liverpool Villa. Why is Palace and Wolves on? Can either of you think of a worse game in the Premier League than that, with less riding on it?
Yeah, Wolves and Everton.
yeah. It's going to get less than 30 seconds on this pod. So I can't think of a reason why, to be honest.
So anyway, let me come back to the game quickly. So obviously it's at Anfield. So and Liverpool have had a sneaky sort of good start to the season, good back end to last season. They're unbeaten in the last 5 against Villa. And over the last 10 games, they beat them 7 times and drawn once. So they rarely lose. I think in that 10 games, they did lose 7-2, which is one to remember. But I think that was at Villa Park. Moussa Diaby looks like a player, doesn't he? He's created the second most big chances out of everyone in the Premier League so far. The reason he's not getting as many assists potentially is because Ollie Watkins is the man who has missed the most big chances in the Premier League. He's missed 4 big chances so far, which is great for my FPL because he's been in there since day one. My prediction is that Liverpool will win a tight game 2-1. But yeah, my overriding emotion right now is sort of pissed me off a little bit that I can't watch it.
Yeah, don't worry too much about the stats of Villa at Anfield though, because that's Villa of old. I think this year, for the first time, we can talk about Villa in the same breath as fringe European teams, and that's why it's such an interesting game this time, more so than previous seasons. So again, we've said it 1,000 times now. Absolutely gutted it's not on TV, and someone needs to be sacked for that.
Yeah, what's his name? Barney from Sky. Barney Francis. Fuck off.
Get him gone. Barney gone, and whoever's renamed BT Sport to TNT Sport as well, you can head off as well for that.
I think Barney Francis left quite a long time ago, but I will distance myself from those comments, and I'm still available for Sky Sports podcasts at any time.
Yeah, obviously the comments of Thomas Gallagher and not to be affiliated with Alex Murphy or Tom Lawrence. Just on that game, I actually think that it's going to be a humdinger as well, which no one will be surprised at. But I fancy Villa to go and get a result there, and I fancy Ollie Watkins to grab a goal as a bit of a "you should have picked me, Gareth." So I'm going to go for Villa to win away at Liverpool. Van Dijk's not going to be in the side. They obviously had that buzz of emotion after the Newcastle game, but yeah, I'm going to go for Villa to win that.
Quickly, can I jump in with some breaking transfer news?
Please do.
Sergio Reguilon has been given permission to go for his Man United medical. I'm speechless.
Wow. So
no, let's not talk about it now. Let's move on to Brighton Newcastle, because we need that one needs to be sort of left stewed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just before we move on to that game, Tomo, I just want to talk about the transfers at Liverpool and Villa. Villa seem to have got their business done and are looking really strong. Liverpool, I'm seeing trying to get a midfielder in, Gravenberch from Bayern being linked, but also the kind of big news story about Salah to Saudi. Can you get the latest on that, please?
Yeah, so Gravenberch looks like that will happen if Bayern can bring in a replacement. And that replacement looks like it will be João Palhinha, which is interesting. Well, Gravenberch is interesting in the fact that I'm surprised Erik ten Hag hasn't gone for him, because Erik ten Hag seems to have gone for every single player he's ever worked under or worked with. And Salah, we've all spoke about the Saudi Pro League's transfer window doesn't shut until the 20th of September, so that there's plenty of time for that one to rumble on. My prediction is that will happen because, as we've seen over the course of the summer, what the Saudis want, they usually get. So, and it just sort of, like, let's be honest, if they come in with 150 million quid bid for a 31-year-old Mo Salah, I know Salah's world class and he is gravy, but 31 is 31. Sort of, he's not getting any younger, so I think they would accept that, and he will go. That's my prediction.
With the Salah one, Tomo, do you think it's dependent on Saudi getting that done sort of by lunchtime tomorrow to give Liverpool a chance to sign someone? Or because I know the Saudi window goes on beyond the UK one, do you think if the money's right, then Liverpool will just take the judgment to bank the money and look to get through to January without Salah then?
Yeah, that's what I think will happen. I don't think there's enough time to get a decent replacement in anyway, and they probably want more time to sort of assess their options with that money. I think they've got a youngster. They brought a youngster on, didn't they, against Chelsea for Salah, that made Salah kick off. Can't remember his name. Yeah, so he'll probably get some minutes. They have got strength and depth in those positions.
I was just going to say, I don't think they need to sign anyone. If they're offering over 100 million for a 31-year-old, do you know what I mean? Take it. They've got Jota, they've got Diaz, they've got Gakpo, they've got sort of Harvey Elliott that can play those positions. Maybe the young lad as well, Darwin Núñez. I don't think they need to sign anyone. I think they're strong there. And I think it would be, I'd hate to see Salah leave the Premier League because I love watching him. But if you're getting over 100 million for a 31-year-old player, I think you've probably got to take it.
I think with that as well, it'd be interesting if Salah goes. You got Kane and Salah have left the Prem then in a summer where every other league saying the Prem's stronger than ever and have the financial pool that they can't deal with. So be really, really interesting to see if he goes. But yeah, looking forward to that fixture. But unfortunately, as we've already touched on, you'll have to wait for match of the day 2 to watch that. Jump to Saturday, guys, and probably the fixture of the day there, Brighton Newcastle. Laura, I'm going to come to you first for this one as well. I've actually got not a single clue on that game.
Well, let me enlighten you. Two good sides, obviously, but here's what I'll give you my prediction, and then I'll tell you why. I think Newcastle are going to win that game, and I think it'll be something like 2-0. And the reason is, Brighton obviously a very good team, well managed. They've impressed us all over the last couple of years. But if there's one chink in the armour that I've noticed, and I'll give you some examples, is I think they can be susceptible to sharp counter-attacking football and players with the ability to attack at pace. Now, looking back at the end of last season, they got beat 5-0 at home by Everton, or 5-something at home to Everton, that basically relegated Leeds. And a few of those goals were like that. And I think not too dissimilar, the West Ham one as well. And then you look at Newcastle, who are obviously a very good team, who can score goals from all sorts of different areas of the pitch. But every time you watch Newcastle, every single game, they always have the same chance once or twice, whereby the ball's turned over in midfield, a ball gets played through, and you suddenly find Gordon or Almiron or now Harvey Barnes through on goal at the angle, and they have either got a shoot or they square it to Wilson or Isaac. And I can just see that scenario arising at the Amex on Saturday. So, although there's not a lot in it, and we all know Brighton are a big team now, just remember Newcastle in the Champions League, they're even better. They did even better than Brighton last year. So, I think I'm backing Newcastle to bounce back from the Liverpool result and get an impressive win at the Amex on Saturday. But obviously, it's a close game.
Tomo?
Yeah, so I do think Newcastle will get a positive result. Whether it'll be a win, I'm not 100% sure. Basically, they've drawn at the Amex twice in the last 2 seasons, and they're unbeaten in the last 4 games against Brighton. So they've got a decent sort of record under Eddie Howe against Brighton. My prediction will be a score draw, Desmond. But yeah, I think you're completely right. I don't think Eddie Howe's too proud to sort of sit in and almost not. They won't do a West Ham on Brighton, but I can see them sitting in, soaking up the pressure and sort of shithousing their way to a positive result. And obviously, they've got so much more quality going forward and in midfield than West Ham. So you'd expect, I expect Newcastle to get a positive result. What I will say is I wanted to shout out Pascal Gross, 32-year-old Brighton midfielder, got his first ever call up to the Germany squad today. And I was having a look before the game, before the podcast, and he has made the most chances in the Premier League this season. Not big chances, as I was talking about before. He's made the most chances from centre mid, and it's 4.8 a game. So really pleased. Really pleased for him, and think he's a really good player. But yeah, my prediction is a score draw, 2-2.
Okay, and I'm gonna go draw as well, and just firmly sit on the fence for that, because I don't know how to call it. But what I'd like to touch on, guys, is Tomo. Some news that seems to be shocking football a bit is that Ansu Fati of Barcelona is being linked with going to Brighton. Doesn't look like the normal kind of Brighton mold of buying someone relatively unknown and bringing them on and developing and selling them on. I know he's had kind of injury issues and things like that, but seems like quite a big name on big wages to bring into what seems like a really settled and sort of well-rounded dressing room. Yeah,
I've been back and forth a little bit with that. When the news broke last night that they were going to get him, at first I was like, I did my silly sort of like, I'm excited to see like the new Messi, and like he was basically dubbed the new Messi a couple of years ago when he broke onto the scene. Obviously he's had some injuries, but yeah. So at first I was excited to see him in the Prem, and I thought it'd be a really good signing. And then when you sort of sit back and think about it, you're like, why is this player going to Brighton? I know Brighton are up and coming team. They're in the Europa League. De Zerbi's obviously a top manager and well regarded, but Fatty's he's basically not played for like 2 years, and it's because of injuries. And like you said, he's coming in on big wages. I think Brighton are going to pay 80% of his wages, which is 160 grand a week. And their highest paid earner at the minute is Lallana on 90 grand a week. And then obviously their club captain, Dunk, is on 80 grand a week. So you're sort of looking at it. And if Ansu Fati comes in now and then it starts raining and getting cold in December and he sort of fucks it off a little bit, I could see some dressing room bust-ups, and it messes up their dressing room sort of equilibrium and harmony. So one to look out for, but one, after doing a little bit of thinking, I don't think it will be a good signing. But a little bit like Renato Sanchez at Swansea.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing how he does. Any other business for Newcastle being talked about, Tomo, at all? I've not seen anything of note, so it looks like they've got their business done nice and early, like a well-run club. Boys, we'll move forward to no digs at United there. We'll move forward, or backwards, I should say, to Friday night football. So first Premier League game at Kenilworth Road, Luton versus West Ham. I've listened to the Footballers Football podcast with Wilson and Antonio, and he's sort of saying it's going to be a hard game, and they're a very physical side who love a battle based on what they've seen from so far. My initial thoughts are West Ham's form and how Luton have looked so far, that West Ham go and get a decent and comfortable win there. Tomo, can I get your thoughts on that one, please?
Yeah, so I completely agreed with you until I sort of really thought about it, and then I just thought Luton are all wrong for West Ham. Like, Luton are just going to sit there. They're basically like West Ham. They just want teams like Brighton to come at you, and Chelsea to come at you, dominate the ball, and then they can pick you off. Whereas I don't think Luton will do that. And I fancy this game. Obviously, Luton haven't been very good this year, this season so far. But it's a Friday night game under the lights, Kenilworth Road. The Luton fans will be going balmy. I feel like they'll use this fixture to sort of restart their season. It'll be like the opening game of the season for them. So for some reason, I'm predicting a Luton win. I just fancy them to get off the mark on Friday. Yeah.
Laura?
Yeah. I can see the scenario that I think if Luton can nudge ahead, and all the things we've spoken about before, first game back at Kenilworth Road, use the furore and the extra 10% maybe that the crowd and the buzz and the occasion can give them, then maybe they can see it out. My only worry is that from the two games that I've seen, and I know they've both been against very good sides, but I just think the golfing quality has been so big and so wide. I don't know that even the Kenilworth Road thing, if West Ham are going to go there fully fit with your Bowens and your Ward-Prowses and your Antonios and your Benramas, I just worry that they might just have a bit too much. So I can see the home win under the lights. I can see, the Sky Sports afterwards, Luton get off the mark, etc. But from what I've seen from Luton so far, I'm probably going to sit on the fence here and say it could go either way, because I'm just not sure that they've got the quality to cope with what West Ham will bring.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to stay with West Ham to win that game. I watched the Chelsea-Luton game. I think we already touched on the last pod about how that could be a cricket score on a different night. I think there's really nice stories, isn't there, about their players coming through the Football League and staying with them and representing them at Premier League level. But some of the stuff that happened in their first game of the season against Brighton and then against Chelsea, I really think that they're one of the weakest teams to ever play in the Prem. I don't think their owners or their manager ever thought they were going to go up last year till it happened. I can't see them getting too many points. I think I said it again. I tweeted that I'm expecting them to go down on the least ever points possible, and I don't foresee them winning at home against West Ham. So yeah, I'm going to go for a West Ham win in that one. Right, boys, we'll look around at the rest of the Premier League fixtures. So first one, Sheffield United, Everton. So Last night had the normal debate of I wanted to watch football on TV. The wife wants to watch something of a series, so we start watching the series. She falls asleep after half hour, and I get to put the footy on. I switch on the footy, and I'm seeing at 0-0 at half time. It's 1-0 Doncaster against Everton. They bring off the bench at half time Ashley Young and Beto. And they go on to win the game 2-1 with goals for Beto and Danjuma. Looks like they might have a striker who can score a goal, albeit against bottom of League Two. He looked a handful. Tomo, can I get your views on Sheffield United Everton? Have they now got their goal scorer to keep them up?
I don't know about that, but he did look good, to be fair. And I thought Everton, I was like you, I switched it on in the second half, and I thought they looked, albeit vulnerable and albeit against Doncaster, they look sort of half decent going forward. Beto, I think he hit the post with another chance as well. And I like Danjuma. I think he's a bit of a character. I liked what he did when he signed for the club with the whole snake emojis, because obviously he was supposed to sign in January and then backed out last minute and went to Tottenham. And he sort of embraced the whole snake thing, which I quite enjoyed. But actually, on the game itself, I think it's a massive game for both teams. Probably bigger for Everton in the sense of Sean Dyche and Sean Dyche's future. But yeah, both teams, 0 points so far, 20th versus 17th. It's a difficult one to predict. I'll probably go 1-1, Beto, last minute equaliser, but if Everton lose that game, it is looking long for Sean Dyche, because they've got Arsenal at home next game as well. So if they lose that one, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, maybe Dyche goes.
What are we talking about? Everton look half decent going forward against Doncaster. I mean, if they don't, I'm not sure they'll ever win a Premier League game again. Honestly, if they don't beat Sheffield United, they're done. They're down. Maybe below like your Lutons and your Sheffield Uniteds. I'm sorry, but God, I mean, I can't believe how pathetic that is. Beto's coming on. What a player! Do you see him against Doncaster?
Well, we didn't say that, did we? We didn't say that.
No, but that's the impression we're giving off. No, I'm not having it. They Prem, that league they're supposed to be playing in and picking up points in, that they've got 0 in so far.
Yeah.
0-0, horrible game.
Yeah, it's a valid point actually on Beto. He scored. He missed a chance with his left foot, which nearly went out for a throw in, and it looked a bit shaky for him. He then got put through and scored. And Lee Hendry screamed, "Welcome to the Premier League!" And I thought, I'm not sure an equaliser in the second half of the League Cup at the Keepmoat's quite welcome to the Premier League. But yeah, no, he looks like a character, Beto. I'm looking forward to seeing him play.
But what I will say, can I just quickly jump into?
Yeah, of course.
To defend ourselves. Look, Everton, they've been starving for some positivity, haven't they? So then you've got this player who's been bought for 30 million euros. He comes on and makes a difference. He looks like a big unit. So, and they desperately need a striker, don't they? They desperately have needed a striker. So, but yeah, I do get your point. Doncaster are 3 divisions below.
They've spent lots of £30 million on players. This isn't a recent thing. It's not a Sean Dyche thing. They narrowly missed out on relegation last year. They did the same the year before under Frank Lampard. They've tried and tried with the strikers. The recruitment is horrendous. See Cenk Tosun. See Neil Maupay. And I've not seen the lad Beto, and I'll give him a chance, but I'm pretty sure we'll be sat here in 6 months' time and he'll be loaned out to Fenerbahce.
Yeah, all right, okay. I actually kind of half agree with you, and yeah, horribly run club. So I hope they get relegated.
0-0 then, and we'll move on. Burnley, Tottenham, Loro, 2 teams who I know you watch quite closely. So interested on your thoughts on if Tottenham carry on their good form there.
Well, I'm biased, aren't I? Because I'm a Tottenham fan really these days. I'm all aboard the big and bus. So I see Spurs rolling into an unorganised Burnley side at the weekend and winning in quite a high-scoring game. I think Burnley will get one, but I think it could be 4 or 5-1. And I was hoping it was going to be the game that we see Richarlison get off the mark, but he's got an injury next to him on FPL, which I'm a bit worried about because he's in my midfield, and I don't know why I did that. Don't ask me why. And And I'm hoping that the goals don't come from Maddison, really, because I took him out when I wildcarded the other day. So from an FPL point of view, I'm interested in it. But mainly from a casual Spurs fan now, I'm interested in seeing Big Ange roll on and get another 3 points at Turf Moor. And like I said the other day, the first 7 fixtures for Burnley look really, really hard. And they don't really know what the best team is or the best shape is, or I don't think really what they're doing at the moment. So we'll have to see. But 4-1 Spurs.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So obviously Big Ange had his first big setback on Tuesday, going out of the Carabao Cup already. He made 9 changes. So clearly Tottenham BT not quite at it.
Do you know what he said about that?
Yeah, he said what he said.
No regrets in life, mate.
Yeah, I know.
Don't
I've
you
heard
just
him
love
say
it?
that. He was like, yeah, he's like, life's too short to have regrets. No regrets. What was
Words to
this?
live by.
Yeah, well, as N-Dubs famously sang. But I'm astounded at him making that many changes. He said on the Football Daily podcast that the reason he did it is that it would be 3 games inside 10 days or a week for his players. He needed a chance to look at some of the other players. We spoke about, is the EFL Cup a important competition for sides? I think if there's one side in the whole of England who that should be important to, it's Spurs. They've got this, Spurs are going to be Spursy and Spurs are going to Spurs and haven't won a trophy apart from the Audi Cup in however many years. A real opportunity there with a new fresh side to go on a bit of a cup run, potentially get a day out at Wembley. Imagine the euphoria for Spurs of winning a trophy. Harry Kane's left and they win a trophy under Big Ange. And I thought he took that far too unseriously than what he should have. And now they're out of one of the 2 competitions that they're able to win this year if we're thinking that they're not going to go on and win the Prem. So I thought that was a bad move for Big Ange and the first blot on his book for me. Tomo?
What I will say as well is that it made no sense given they have no European football this year.
Yeah.
And I do understand managers bringing in their B team or squad players for these early rounds of the Carabao Cup, but they're playing Fulham away. Fulham are no mugs. And okay, fine margins in football, they lost a penalty shootout. So actually, if they win the penalty shootout, are we saying Big Ange masterclass? Then it sort of changes the narrative a little bit. But I just thought, play if you make maybe 3 or 4 changes so you can rest some of your bigger players, but you've sort of got the core of first teamers in. And why are we talking about these Premier League players like 2 or 3 games into the season as if they need a rest? Like they're going on, most of them are going on into international break in a week, so most of them will get a rest anyway. So I just thought it made no sense really, and yeah, clearly it was the wrong decision because they lost. But like you say, fine margins because it was a penalty.
They drew, didn't they?
No, they got knocked out, so they lost.
But did they draw the game?
They drew in 90 minutes. Yeah,
that's not a thing. That's not a thing.
No. I don't know. Like I don't know. I know you won the EFL Cup last year, so you're silverware holders, but no one really gives a shit about that trophy. Who says Big Ange ain't going for the Premier League? I'm sorry. A couple of seasons ago, Jose Mourinho got him to the final of one of those cups and he got sacked before it. So he knows, Ange Postecoglou, that he needs to do well in the Premier League. So I'm sure he would have liked to have gone further in that competition. I think the team he put out was more than capable of beating Fulham. Okay, they got knocked out on penalties, but get off his back. The guy's going for the Premier League and he's going about it in a sterling manner, in my opinion. And
yeah, apologies to speak foul of your Big Ange, but question for you to finish before we move on then, and think before you jump in here because it's Tottenham. Would Tottenham fans rather win the EFL Cup or finish top 4 this year?
finish top 4.
Tomo?
Oh God, honestly, Spurs fans must be craving a trophy.
You got to.
But obviously, your Daniel Levy's of this world and money men, they'll obviously want the Champions League. And I suppose in terms of transfers and recruitment and stuff, it will be better for
exactly.
Next summer.
Think about the bigger picture. If top 4 finish allows you to go on, then and you've done year 1 is good, top 4 Champions League, and you can start recruiting players of that ilk that want to be in the Champions League again. Forget the Mickey Mouse Cup. Like I said the other day, if you get there, by hook or by crook and you would find yourself in the semi-final, then play your best team. But don't bother now. Imagine if last night he'd have played Maddison and he got injured. Everyone would be going, what are you doing?
Yeah, but you just and he could come out and say, "Well, I'm trying to win a cup competition, mate. No regrets."
Yeah, and well, look, if there's any Tottenham fans listening, get in contact. Let us know. Win a trophy or qualify for top 4. And yeah, we'll see what you have to say, guys. We'll move on to the next game then that we want to quickly touch on. Chelsea Forest. Tomo, I'm going to come to you. Have you decided yet to bring Nico Jackson into your fantasy team, or have you brought Sterling in? And don't lie to me.
I haven't looked at my fantasy team because it was thoroughly depressing last week. I'll look at it tomorrow. But yeah, Nico Jackson obviously got 1 goal against Luton, which was, as we spoke about on Tuesday, pretty par for the course. And actually, you're sort of hoping, like if you're a Nico Jackson owner, you're hoping he gets more than a goal. But yeah, it's the battle of the strikers, really, isn't it? Nico Jackson looks like a scruffy player, one who misses quite a lot of chances. But the thing is, he has had a lot of chances. And then you've got Loro's main man, Taiwo Awani.
To say.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry for my pronunciation. But yeah, and if he scores, he obviously moves past Salah and Adebayor to hold the most. I think it's the African record to scoring in the most consecutive Premier League games. Which puts him up there with the greats, doesn't it? So I fully expect him to score, to be honest. And but I do think Chelsea will win 2-1.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot to add to that. I, on this rare occasion, agree with everything Tigo's just said. I expect Chelsea to win the game ultimately, but I do expect Taiwo to go on and break that African goal-scoring consecutive record. And I can't believe that. I know I said this the other day that I think maybe Tottenham should look at him. I can't believe he's not been linked anywhere. Imagine if, like, I don't know, imagine if an English player had done that. Do you know what I mean? Like, he'd be, I remember Joe Willock did it for Newcastle, and all of a sudden his price tag went up 10 times. I know they ended up actually signing him. Yeah, I love Taiwo, and I'd like to see him get a big move. But in this fixture, I think you're right. I think Chelsea will use that Luton win to pull away and start winning a few on the bounce, hopefully, for them.
Yeah, and maybe clubs have come in for Taiwo and made initial kind of approaches, and Forest have just said he is not for selling. You can't put a price on Big Taiwo. So yeah, be interested to see that. I too think a Chelsea home win. I'm still deciding whether to make one final change in the fantasy and get rid of Ollie Watkins for Nico Jackson, but Loro keeps putting me off, and so far he's probably been right. So yeah, interesting that one. Quick run through of the other games in the Prem. Palace v Wolves, who've now got humongous pressure on to perform at 2:00 Sunday after we touched on Liverpool Villa not being on TV. So fully expecting that to be 0-0. Wolves obviously got off the mark last time with 3 points from a late goal from the big man up front. Palace have got Eze. Everyone's waiting for him to explode, and he's made it into the England squad. So yeah, that game. Brentford host Bournemouth, expecting Brentford to go on and win that, if honest. I think Mbeumo will probably be looking to add to his goal scoring, and I think they'll have too much for Bournemouth. And then City v Fulham, who we're not going to talk about City too much more. We said on the last pod, they win games too much. There's nothing interesting to say about them while they're in this form. They're just signing Mateus Nunes from Wolves to add to their already strong midfield. They're probably going to win 4 or 5-0. People will be triple captain in Haaland. But I think the less said on that fixture, the better. Let's move on to EFL, chaps. Laura, I'm going to come to you for Leeds v Sheffield Wednesday, because you were absolutely buzzing when we did earlier in the week pod off the back of Leeds' result. Sheffield Wednesday look like they can't get a result, buy a win, score a goal. So I'm fully expecting you to demolish them at the weekend.
As am I. Exclusive now from Loro Football News. Leeds have just completed the signing of Ilya Gruev from Bundesliga side Werder Bremen for an undisclosed fee. I think he's a central midfielder. So yeah, adding strength in numbers there. Like I said the other day, I think we've probably got the best. We've certainly got the best front line in the league. I think we're on our way to having the best team in the league. We signed Jed Spence this week as well, who championship viewers will remember from his time at Nottingham Forest down that right-hand side behind Brennan Johnson and getting them promotion under Steve Cooper. I think he's a really good acquisition for us, and it's just all falling into place. And I've said this before, sometimes you can have such a home banker, when Sheffield Wednesday rock bottom, by the way, no points, that it doesn't happen. But I think this will be breaking goal scoring records on Saturday, and I think it will be a goal fest. And I would predict a 6-0 Leeds United win.
Wowzers. And you've got obviously that front four that you spoke about who look electric. You've signed this midfielder from Werder Bremen. I've seen that Jed Spencer's come in on loan as well. So you feeling that the squad's pretty much there now and you're ready for a title charge?
Yeah, I don't know who this Werder Bremen guy is. I won't lie, I've never heard of him. I felt like we needed a little bit more beef in midfield, but we'd already signed Ethan Ampadu, who's looked really, really good. And we've got young Archie Gray that's been playing as well. So, yeah, we've brought him in. I think we've been linked with Kenny McLean at Norwich and also Glenn Kamara, who you probably would have seen at Rangers, who are two good midfielders as well. But that sort of area of the pitch for Leeds now is just to keep us ticking because we've got so much firepower going forward in Nonto's. We've got Nonto, Sinistera, and Pirro who will probably play, but then we've got Somerville and Dan James to come off the bench, or for squad rotation or for whatever. And obviously, everyone knows the Championship's a long, hard, grueling season. Quite often, you can be playing Saturday, Tuesday, and I just don't see anyone else with that kind of strength in depth, like I said. And we've just sent Sam Greenwood out on loan to Middlesbrough as well. And I think that rings volumes that we're sending our players out to teams like Middlesbrough on loan. That's how good we are. At the start of the season, Middlesbrough are quite fancied. I think they're like certainly the top 5 favourites to win the league. So I'm fully expecting us to beat Sheffield Wednesday and go from strength to strength there. And I'm looking forward already to like the Leicester fixture because that could be a huge clash of the Titans this year.
Yeah, it looks like Leicester are obviously 100%. Leeds are going to be hot on their tail now. It looks like those fixtures could be massive for the league. But just very quickly, Laura, I saw as well Leeds knocked out midweek in the EFL Cup. I think you said that you weren't too interested in that cup competition. You wanted to Leeds go out playing well and maybe go out on penalties. I think it ended up being that way in a 20 penalty thriller against Salford. Any change of heart on that, or just gave a few people a run out and not interested in about in the slightest?
No, it's exactly what I said. You're quite right. I said, don't disgrace ourselves, play well, but get knocked out on penalties. I think we had 36 shots on goal. So, in effect, it was a really good training-friendly match, and we don't have to play in the Mickey Mouse Cup ever again this season. So, I'm more than happy to concentrate on the league now that I think we've got a very good chance of winning it.
Good stuff. Just a couple of other fixtures, guys, from the EFL, which I'll just quickly cover. Bolton versus Derby. Obviously, Bolton got off to a flyer, then got beat by Wigan and drew against Burton. But Derby, I think, had a massive win against Peterborough. Martin Waghorn scored a first half hat-trick. So, Laura, quite a mouth-watering game again. I actually fancy Derby for that one.
Yeah, I think it would be... all games are big games. I think it'd be a brilliant one for Paul Warne to win at Derby. They're only 3 points off top. Not that you should really look at the table at this early on in the season, but when you want to win a league, which Derby fans will be expecting this year, you normally win it in periods. There's normally a period of games whereby you, out of 15 games, you win 10, 11, 12 of them. City do it every year, normally after Christmas. And I just think that if Derby can go to Bolton away and pick up 3 points, that could be the catalyst for them to kick on. And I think it would probably give them the respect more, earn the respect more of the rest of the league as well. So big game. Bolton lost 4-0 at home to Wigan the other day as well. So I think Derby will be full of confidence thinking they can get something there. And yeah, big game for both. Both will be wanting to win it. They're probably the 2 biggest clubs in the league, but I think Derby stand out a little bit like a sore thumb in that league at the moment. They've had their year down there, and they really do need to go back up. So I'm hoping for a Derby win because, like we've said before, we know Paul Warne from Yeovil, and he's a good bloke. Been on a good podcast before, and hopefully he can get promoted from League One for the 3rd time.
Yeah, well said. And then League Two, Tranmere host Wrexham. I saw that it was at 12:30 and thought, it must have been picked as like the BT Sport fixture. Maybe they've got some of the League Two action there, but it isn't. It turns out that it's a derby game, which I turned my head at first, but then realised it's only 40 minutes between the two from North Wales across to Merseyside. Been moved forward to 12:30 on Police's recommendation. Obviously, Wrexham haven't made the best start, Laurie, with people thinking that their Hollywood money would take them up. Just reflections on that game.
Yeah, I mean, when you're from Yeovil, 42 minutes, I mean, that's about as close to derby as you can ever expect. I think the further you go out the country, normally people's derbies, you can almost see the stadium from looking out the other one. But yeah, no surprise that's being classed as a derby. I think with Wrexham, you just said it there, the Hollywood money. They haven't really, they were favourites at the start of this season. Bearing in mind they've come up from the National League, they were favourites. They're not anymore, and we're only 5 or 6 games in. And I just think people were expecting the Hollywood money thing to be a thing. They haven't really signed anyone. Like they've made a couple of decent transfers, but nothing major. And although their team looked ridiculously good in the National League, it doesn't look ridiculously good in League Two. It looks pretty good, and I would expect them to be in the upper echelons of the league. But unfortunately, in League Two, you've got a lot of other good teams as well. You've got teams like MK Dons that have come down. You've got Notts County that went up with them and signed David McGoldrick. You've got Mark Hughes' Bradford. You've got the Class of 92 Salford. You've got your teams like Gillingham that are well set this year. You've got Mansfield who finish up there every year. So it's not going to be as easy as just winning the league. Obviously, it's early days. I wouldn't say they're struggling. I think they've been fine. I think they'll settle into it, and I think there'll be some winning the playoffs. But I don't anticipate them getting promoted in the automatic spots this year. I said at the start of the year, I think it will be Gillingham and Stockport and one other. Stockport have started off slow, but I fancy them to come good. Gillingham have won 4 out of 5. And for me, I think Notts County look quite ominous, actually, because, like I said, maybe Wrexham haven't spent the Hollywood money, but Notts County have bought in a Hollywood player, David McGoldrick, because he was one of the top scorers with 20 plus in League One last year with Derby. So that must be quite scary for defences at that level, I would imagine. So I think that league is, you can't ever call a result, but I think it's starting to shape up something like what you might see towards the end of the season. MK Dons are right up there, Gillingham are right up there, Notts County are right up there, and you need a few to come up the pack. And I expect Wrexham to be one of them, but not to get in the automatics.
Yeah, Wrexham 6 points from 5 games, scored 14, conceded 14, 1-1, lost 1, drawn 3, had some high scoring games. So the really interesting thing with that is that 9, if they had 3 more points on 9, they'd be in 5th. If they had 3 less points on 3, they'd be in 21st. So that league's already shaping up as it always does. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see the result of that. And then finally, the mighty Yeovil Town, Loro, I'm in the fortunate position to be able to go to that this weekend as well, against Chelmsford, who's a side I don't think we've played in a competitive game before. So initial thoughts on that?
Well, since we've been on this podcast, Ollie Thomas has just been recalled to Bristol City.
Oh, wow.
So, and I mean, for our listeners, Ollie Thomas is an 18-year-old striker from Bristol City who's really impressed this year, to the point where our big sort of summer signings in Reece Murphy and Jake Hyde have sometimes found themselves on the bench for him to either start or come on. So, yeah, I mean, that's taken me back a little bit. Whether we've sort of sent it back in hoping to get some room to bring someone back in, I don't know. But Chelmsford Saturday, they're above us. I think they're unbeaten in the league. They're second. It's a big game. It's the first game that we've had at Hewish Park where it's not like one of these teams that look a little bit non-league, if you know what I mean, like Tunbridge Angels. They're a good setup, good outfit, got good former EFL players at Chelmsford, and it'll be a tough test. So it'll be the first game. I think if we can get 3 points, it'll feel massive. And then we can go into the local derby at Weston-super-Mare next Tuesday full of confidence. So hoping for 3 points, but it's probably going to be the most nervy one of the season, I think.
Yeah, that's really disappointed about Ollie Thomas. I think he looked really, really bright. Didn't obviously start every game for us, but looked a real handful and offered us a pace option that we've not had up there. So I'll be interested to see, as you say, whether that's we've sent him back or whether there's maybe a League Two side or a National League side that have thought, you know what, we'll have a bit of that and we'll get him out of National League South footy straight away. Yeah, disappointing, but yeah, hopefully 3 points for the Glovers will reflect next time. Boys, we'll finish up with Spin the Wheel. So I introduced it last week. Unfortunately, we had goalkeepers. Loro went on to win last week with 2 points for Edison, which kind of shows how the games went last week. I managed to pick up a solitary point for Ramsdale, and Tomo, who went for his man Onana, got 0 points. To save a bit of time, boys, I've actually spanned the wheel already, and you just have to trust me on this. The result was midfielder. Tomo, I'm going to come to you first. Can I have your midfielder and a couple of reasons why, please?
Yeah, so I've gone for Brian Mbeumo, one of the highest. He's made one of the highest point scoring midfielders on the game, so no sort of surprise. Main reason being Bournemouth at home is a great fixture. Then they've got 3 really good fixtures out of the next 4. So they've got Newcastle away after that, which obviously is a tough game. Then Everton at home, which is basically a bank of 3 points and a sort of 3-0 win, and Buemo hat-trick. And then they got Forest away. So I think he's one to bring in. But obviously we're talking about this fixture, Bournemouth at home. Bournemouth has struggled. So yeah, I think he'll bag a hat-trick.
Happy days. I'll go second this week, being that I finished second last week, and I'm going to go for Raheem Sterling. They got Forest at home. He looked electric against Luton, albeit it was Luton. I think he's going to have a point to prove. He's been left out the England squad, so might have the bit between his teeth even more. Looking really good form. He did an interview with The Athletic where he said that he sorted his diet out and among a number of other things. So yeah, he's looking really strong. So I'm going to back Raz to get a double-digit haul. And Loro?
Maddison. One, he's not in my fantasy football team anymore, so I need a reason to cheer if he does get something. They're playing Burnley, who I think are a little bit shaky at the back. I expect Tottenham to score multiple goals at the weekend, and I would imagine Maddison will be a big part of those goals if they do happen. So, yeah, I'm going to go for your boy Madders.
Just quickly, can I just jump in there? I know I had my head up my arse there, and went, listing off Mbuemo's fixtures as if like we're only talking about this Bournemouth at home game, but it is the Champions League draw that's happening right now. So my attention is elsewhere. So I apologise for that, boys.
Yeah, that's fine, Tomo. You know, I work hard to bring a feature into the pod to make it a bit more desirable for everyone, and you work on your laptop in the background. But there we go. These things happen. Callum Wilson did a similar thing on his pod, so if he can do it, so can you. Boys, we'll wrap it up there. Been a pleasure as always. We'll be back next week where we'll look at those European draws, any deadline day signings across the country, and the results from all the weekend's action. Cheers.